Right, we're gonna open the meeting at 6:01. We have our minute taker and we're gonna be keeping time tonight. First order is public comment. Do we have any public who'd like to issue a comment? Not seeing any at this time.
Can I say something really quick?
Sure.
I'll take off my minutes thing. I just want to congratulate the board on, you're doing a wonderful job. I've been in your seat. I know how hard it is, and going in to beat your local school board season, I thought you might like to hear something good about what you're doing. And I also wanted to pass along, I volunteered at the middle school JV wrestling tournament this weekend. Lots of compliments about Mount Aid.
Yay.
A lot.
Wonderful.
So, good things.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. No problem.
Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on then to our first action item, which is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Meredith first, Kylie second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 I'm gonna assume you say aye. Can't see you at the moment. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion passes. We'll move down then to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Melissa first, Meredith second. Any discussion? No discussion on either item? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Move down then to our executive limitations monitoring, and the first item is a discussion from our career center. So we have our representatives here, where there's some materials on the desk, and I'll just hand it on over.
Wonderful. I'm Nicole McTavish. I'm the superintendent and the director of the Hannaford Career Center. And I also have our business manager, director of operations, and school board chair, who you might know, Kim Farnham. And if you have very technical questions, I probably lob them over to the business department. But most of this, I think I can probably answer questions for. So I have a lot of slides, but a lot of them are really quick. I never know when I'm coming to an audience what you already know about the Career Center, especially since school board positions turn over. So I do try to do just a little bit overview about what we do before we get into the meat of the actual proposal for budget. So the Hannaford Career Center is a CTE center that serves both high school students and we serve adult learners. We serve about 350 students each year at the 9-12 level, and then a couple hundred adult learners that go through our programs. They're mostly medical. We're gonna, as we go through today, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the work we do. I'm gonna talk about the students we serve, and then I'm gonna get into the meat of the factors, very similar factors that you're all facing for the proposed budget for fiscal year 27. So we go ahead and slide past David Thomas, and then on to about us. There we go. So the Hannaford Career Center, we were formed in 1971. The Hannaford Center and myself were the same age, so we share a very similar birthday, so that's kind of exciting. And each year we serve it. At least as long as we've been tracking it for about the last 5 years, we serve about 1 in 3 high school students in Addison County. This year's number is almost exactly 33%. In fact, we also work with 92 students right now, and that number will grow over the course of the year who are working with our community partners in work-based learning. We'll talk just a little bit more about that as we get into the meat of this. We have 3 campuses, which is a lot to monitor with a very small staff, but we really, we value every one of the campuses. So the main campus has the majority of our programming. The North Campus has our automotive, our diesel, and our agriculture programming. And then, as you know, we have a satellite program in Virgin's high school doing pre-technical classes for mostly 9th and 10th graders, some 11th graders. We like to kind of tee this up about why CTE matters, because it matters not only to us, right? We really believe strongly in CTE as a mechanism for students to get excited about their futures and careers. We know that students that take CTE programming graduate at higher rates. They have a high level of engagement. And we also know how important career technical education is to our communities. As we go ahead and move forward, we know that 1 in 3 Vermonters in less than almost 4 years at this point are going to be over 60. So people are retiring in droves from the trades. And right now we are certainly not graduating students at a fast enough rate to take up those trades in the state of Vermont. So it's something that I think we're all thinking about whenever you have to pick up that phone and call an electrician or a plumber or a roofer, you know what I'm talking about. So our other statewide context is for students on this, from their perspective, as they head out into the world. We know that in Vermont, about 50% of our kids go on to a 4-year university and the other 50% don't. And our college going rate actually is in Addison County, our college going rate from the Hannaford Center is the same as the aggregate of the sending high schools. So we have quite a lot of kids going on to college. And in addition, the students that aren't going on to college that are entering the trades, they're entering not only with a high school diploma, but they're entering with industry recognized credentials, which is the same exact credentials that the adults already working in those fields have. And they're also entering generally with some college experience, so post-secondary experience in their field. And almost all of our kids that are going into a trade right after high school have also had work-based learning experience. We feel very strongly that if they're going to go straight into the trade, that they need to have that experience under their belt when they go in. That puts them an advantage not only for getting into the field, but also earning a significantly higher wage that first year when they're entering the field. So CTE is good for kids, it's good for communities, and it's definitely good for Vermont's future. You might also know, if you've been following the news, that CTE is really having a moment. Over the last couple of years, young people and adults who are transitioning careers are really starting to take a hard look at the cost benefit ratio of college degrees versus going straight into industry over a lifetime of work and thinking about how much debt they want to take on from college debt these days. Enrollment is up in CTE programs at the high school level. Enrollment is up at post-secondary institutions, technical colleges, and enrollment is up at community colleges across the nation that have CTE trades. So this is really, it's a movement that we hope continues to have CTE flourish for kids, for young people, and for people that are adults that are transitioning careers. One of the things that you probably know about CTE, both in Vermont and around the nation, is that part of our mission is that we look to mirror the industries that have a need in the area where we serve. So our region is Addison County and then the state of Vermont. So the programming that we offer, the programming that we stand up, we work very hard to make sure that we are mirroring the labor market that we serve. So the programs that we stand up are programs that we know that Addison County and the state of Vermont needs. In fact, we just got word today that we are getting approved for a brand new electrical program. So we're going to have an electrician program next year for the first time. We're really excited. So one thing, when we're trying to set sort of a context for the tuition rate for our sending school and the number of kids that are going there, we try to think about the whole picture of public education in Addison County. So if you add up all the school districts, us, Lincoln, you, Virgins, and Addison Central, last year it was $125 million that we spent on public education across all of Addison County. It'll probably be slightly more than that this year. But when we look at last year's number, we accounted for less than 4.45% of that whole budget. So for a very small chunk of the overall budget, we're serving 1 in 3 high school students. So we feel that, that's a pretty good investment in the future of our kids, and it's a pretty good investment in the future of our community. We talked a little bit about this, but as the students cross the stage, right, from us and for you, because we do this all in partnership for your school district and for Middlebury and for Virgins, as the students cross the stage, the students that are coming from their career center have that additional, not just a high school diploma, but also the industry recognized credentials, the workplace experience, and also generally college credit. We also try to look at how our kids are faring as we compare them across the state and across the nation. And for our kids are faring almost a little bit higher than Vermont CTE across the board. And then when you compare them to all students, like the N of all kids that are graduating in the state of Vermont, CTE students and specifically students that go to our center are graduating at a slightly higher rate than students across Vermont. And that's really exciting. We think that that probably has something to do with their engagement in the industry that they're getting very excited to enter. And then the economic imperative, this is when we're talking sort of at that citizen level. So as we look across Vermont and we know that we have this aging population and we know that we're not getting enough people going into the trades, one of the things that we know we're also not going to be able to do is attract that number of workers, that number of laborers into our state for all of the reasons that you and I have a hard time, right? Buying a house, the cost of living in Vermont, the cost of healthcare in Vermont, the competition of wages in the states that are contiguous to Vermont doesn't set us up really well for poaching workers from other states. So what we really need to be doing is focusing on growing our own, especially when students that are already in Vermont have ties to Vermont. And generally, especially when they're young people, they might even have the option to stay at home for a few years while they're first entering that labor force. So who do we serve? Who are our clients? So we serve about 350 kids that are 9 through 12 every year. We, in our 9th and 10th grade, those are our exploratory programs. They do a little bit of sort of introduction to the field. And then in one of our courses, they actually get introduction to a number of fields. And those courses are set up for 9th and 10th graders, and 11th graders can also take them. And then we have our technical classes, and those are really specialized classes. Those are the industry professional classes that are generally organized around for 11th and 12th graders, but 10th graders can also take them as long as they're on track to graduate. And the mantra that we have in CTE is that we serve students so that they can have high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. So we're preparing Addison County and Vermont workforce for high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. So what are our demographics? Right now, we have quite a few. One of the things we like to really point out is that and this is different than many of the CTE centers in the state, we have a really strong compass around that CTE is public education and that all students are welcome. So our admission process, we are required to have an admission process by the state of Vermont, but we work very hard to allow all students to come to our center. And so when we look at our demographics, one of the things that we know that we serve is we do serve a higher percentage of those students on IEPs and 504 plans. But you saw before that our graduation rate is slightly higher than all of Vermont and right in line with all other CTE. So even though we have a very high population, almost 40% of students on plans, they're graduating at a higher rate. So we feel that's a really strong testament to the power of CTE. And what do we do? What are our programs? We have our very exciting program of study, first time ever, hot off the press. We're really excited about this. This was a labor of love. You have no idea. It looks kind of simple, but finding all of the pieces of information and putting them all in one place and having them all be correct, it was a lot. So this is our first of each year. We'll have an update of this document so that you can use it, counselors can use it, parents can see it, kids can use it, and they can really see what we have to offer. Addison County does an amazing job offering these programs to kids, and we really want to get the word out to more kids. So for our pre-technical programs, you can see these are the pre-technical programs that all kids are able to take: ag, STEM, mechanical science, and then visual communications. And then if you're a student at Vermont, you have an additional 6 classes that you can choose from as part of that satellite program. And then our technical programs, and these are the programs where our kids just really thrive and go into industry. We have the theater program, engineering, auto, construction, culinary, design and illustration, diesel, education, and human services. Electrical technology is the one we're going to be starting next year. Medical professions, natural resources, sustainable ag, and welding and fabrication. And welding was brand new this year. Then the other piece is not only do the students learn the skill in the center, right? They're practicing the skill with industry professionals, like the teachers that we have been professionals in the industry, then they come back, earn a teaching degree and teach the students. Then as the students are juniors and seniors and start getting enough proficiency in the field, then we also have them go out into the workforce and actually do their skills, learn their skills, and be in the workforce operating with other professionals. So they kind of get that introduction, proficiency, and then they're out learning how to actually be somebody in that field, be a professional in that field. So our work-based experience right now for 24, 25, you can see the employers, the partners that we had and the number of students. And we have hired a fantastic new work-based learning coordinator, Jess Daniel is her name. And she is already on track to break all of these records. So I look very much forward to being able to report the data out at the end of this school year. We're already here and we're only this was last year's data at the end of the year. We're already here and we're only halfway through the year. So I'm really excited. Kids are getting out there. And you can see, so this is our comparison from last year. The light blue is last year's number. So last year we had 28% of our eligible students being placed in work-based learning by the end of the year. But this year, only halfway through the year, we've already got 57% of our kids that are eligible out there. And last year we had 75% of our programs. So the actual programs that we have that participated that had kids out in the field. And this year we're already at 83%. We're hoping to hit 100 by the end of this year. And these are some of the community partners there where our kids are placed right now. So these are our current community partners, and by the end of the year, we'll have many more. We wanted to say we usually try to really say something about the medical field here. The partnership that our facility has with Porter Medical and the University of Vermont Medical Hospital is so far above and beyond what I've ever seen the partnerships be between hospitals and doctors and physicians. Our kids have opportunities I could not have ever even imagined in other places I've been. Our students are in ORs. They are working with the elderly. They are at hospice. They are working right next to sonograms. They are experiencing radiology. They are having a level of access, which is spectacular and which they would not have any other way. Even other medical programs, Porter Hospital has given us significantly more access for our kids. Right now, the students in our medical professions program, if they are able to stay for the full 2 years, they get an EMR, so emergency medical response, an EMT, their actual technician. They get phlebotomy, and they have a licensed nursing assistant. By the time that they are done, they have all of those industry credentials. They can walk right into any of those industries once they turn 18. It's pretty spectacular. And then adult education, lots of times people forget we also work with adults. So anybody in our community, anybody actually in the state of Vermont, but we really are organized around Addison County, can come and take adult education classes with us. Most of our adult education classes have to do with medical professions, phlebotomy and certified nursing assistant and LNA. But we also have lots of other classes. We have a very full and always, we have a level 1 and a level 2 of welding. And then we have some tractor repair, some CNC machining and other things like that. So we do both classes for people who are transitioning, for people who just want to learn a skill. And we really try to help Porter by bolstering up the number of people that go into the field there. And these are the current classes that we're offering right now. So what is our enrollment and our capacity? So again, we start at the beginning of this year, we had 377 students. We always hover right around that 350 mark the last couple of years. Our enrollment has actually been going up. So as I said, we're serving about 1/3 of the high school students, and we also serve about 100 to 200 adult learners that go through our programs every year. The thing that I really wanted to take a minute and talk about is you have a document here, and how we could really make a difference in both Addison County and in our tax base is right now we have room in our facility to serve up to 600 students. Our facility was built for that number of students. And one of the pieces of our context is that we're talking about shrinking populations at all of the sending schools. But in CTE, the populations across the state of Vermont are actually growing. In fact, to our north in Burlington and to our south in Rutland, they have more students trying to take CTE than they have seats available. So they have excess students who are not getting the opportunity to take CTE because there aren't enough seats for them. Whereas we have the space and we're not that far away and we're on a pretty easy to travel road, right? I-7 is not challenging. So one of the things that we've been really spending a lot of time talking about is why are we turning kids away from CTE given the context of Vermont and what Vermont needs and what kids need so that they can be successful and move into workplace that into careers that they love. So as we look at the excess capacity that we have to our north and to our south, and we look at the space that we have at the Hannaford Career Center, if we were able to take those students and allow them to come to our center, it would help the kids, it would help the community, it would help the state, and it would definitely help the tax rate.
Why can't we?
We can, but part of the issue is the way that the funding is structured for CTE is the money follows the kid. So it is a disincentive to districts to send students outside of their service area because that money then follows them outside of the service area. We are working with legislatures and I've spent a lot of time talking to her about how do we change that funding model so it doesn't disincentivize students from taking CTE. But at the same time, given the context and the pressures that we have on the trades in Vermont, given the context and the pressures that we have on young people needing high wage, high demand careers without owing $100,000 in debt after 4 years of education, and giving the context that these jobs are very high wage and in high demand. We have kids that are graduating from our welding program that are walking into $70,000 jobs. That's just one example from a kid that we just were talking to. In fact, we also have a student that he just started at his, he's a diesel student and he just started at his company. They're already sending him off for advanced training to be the one technician in their shop that knows a specific type of engine. So it's pretty spectacular what kids can do. So when you look at this, we got all of the data on all the students are sitting on wait lists right now in the state of Vermont, just to our north and to our south. This isn't even, every place else in the state, but just to our north and to our south, there are 131 students that are currently, they got accepted to their CTE center, but there wasn't a seat for them. So why are we not putting them on a bus and bringing them here so they can have CTE? If you go to the next slide, when you look at that, not only would we be having 131 more kids having access to CTE, going into our communities, being able to have the job that they want and supporting their community and all the things that we need. It would also then allow our tax rate to go down significantly. So I'm going to get to that in just a second, what the actual tax rate would look like if we were able to do that. One of the things that you asked me last year when I was here was how many actual students do we have from each sending school district? So you can see here both the number of students and the percentage of our center that is filled with Middlebury students, Virginia students, and Mount Abe students, homeschooled students, Otter Valley students, and other. And that Otter Valley slice is an interesting piece because those students are not actually in our service area, but they come to us because we are one of the last diesel programs in the state. So they're allowed to come to us because we have a program that isn't offered elsewhere. These are the enrollments. That was another question that I had here last year, which was how many students are in each of these programs. So if you go through right now, you can see how many students we actually have sitting in those programs. One of the programs we're a little bit concerned about is culinary arts, and we're not sure. We've done quite a lot of exit interviews with students actually about why this suddenly is an issue. And one of the issues is the work-life balance. Students are very cognizant of the work-life balance in this industry. So we're working with our professionals in the industry now about what are the jobs in culinary that have a reasonable work-life balance that we can really lean into, because not everybody's a line cook, right? So there are a lot of pieces in that industry. But most of our other programs, the magic number in CTE is 8. If you have 8 students, it is considered a full program. And so any program that has over 8 is considered a full program in CTE. And then these are our Middlebury campus and our Virgins campus for pre-tech programs.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Mhm.
If the main campus has space for 300 more kids, why don't we just bring the Middlebury and the Virgins campus kids to the main campus?
So the Middlebury campus, that is the main campus,
Okay.
right? So they are there. The Virgins the satellite program in Virgins was stood up for a really specific reason long before me, and that was to have pre-tech classes only there, not technical classes, so that kids would get excited about CTE and then later come to the technical class. Because Virgins at that time and to date doesn't have robust offerings in those areas, right? They're very small. So we run the satellite program, get kids excited, and then when they want to move to the technical program, they do come to the main campus, right? But those two teachers are actually embedded in Virgin specifically to offer the pre-tech, the 9th and 10th grade classes in order to get the kids excited. Because they wouldn't otherwise be able to do that.
So I have a question. Can you hear? Sorry.
Yes.
So when we bring these students, I mean, we get them hooked, they're still divided between two student bodies, correct? They're getting their core courses at Virgins, or they getting their core courses at Otter Valley, and then coming to Middlebury for tech. Is that correct?
Correct. Our center is a half-day center. It's across the state. There are two different kinds of career technical centers. Some centers like ours are half-day centers where students get their academic courses at their sending high school. Then they come to us for CTE. Other centers are full-day centers where they have both academic and career classes at the CTE center. Like Stafford, for example, is a full-day center. Students go there all day and they get their English and their math there as well as their career program.
So would that not be a bigger draw for us to be able to offer these students one-stop shopping? Because it just seems like you do a course or take a class in the morning, and then you hop a bus and you got to ride for a period of time, and then you got to ride back to either another course, or you got to ride back to your employment. It seems like a lot of transitions for students when we pride ourselves in minimalizing transitions for traditional students.
Yeah, I think in our region, the limitation has been the two things. One is athletics. Students really want to be organized. Many of our students are in athletics, so they like to have that hook back at their main campus. The other piece is, I think there has been a reluctance, and I understand it, to have essentially yet another high school in Addison County, because then we would be competing essentially with Virgins, Mount Abe, and Middlebury for full-time students. And I think the other piece is when we have a program that's so specific, like the International Baccalaureate program that we have at the Middlebury campus, where about half of our kids come from, it doesn't work that they could come full day to us because they have very specific requirements for that program that they couldn't get through us. So we have some limitations in the county, which would make it more challenging than I think in other places.
It's an interesting thought. I have one more quick question. Of the students that graduated, and I was thrilled to hear that they're walking right into full paying jobs, especially at $70,000 a year. How many of those graduates, those success stories, actually stay in Vermont?
I don't have that data, but I do have, we have for the last 2.5 years, we have been running alumni success stories. And I can tell you, we have no shortage of them. We run one a week of a student who graduated from our center and is now working and living either in Addison County or in Vermont and doing something spectacular with their career. So
that's great news.
So I don't have longitudinal data of that sort, although we're working very hard. The last 2 years, we have been doing exit interviews with every senior and following them. I don't have it prior to that. But I have no shortage of outstanding alumni stories. And we share them on social media if you want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Good questions. So here's the meat of the argument that I'm trying to make, and I'm really spending a few minutes talking to you because you are in places and with people who you can talk to these points with, who might be able to make a big difference. So we're spending a lot of time at Montpelier right now talking to elected officials about the service regions. And CTEs are organized in service regions. So we serve essentially loosely Addison County, although it's not 100%. There are 4 towns which are in Addison County that actually don't go to us. So it's a little bit weird, but mostly we serve Addison County. And service regions are generally organized in that manner. And within those service regions, the students, any student that lives in that service region is supposed to go to that career technical center. They are allowed by law to go to a center outside of their service region, but the catch is there's no transportation. So for a lot of students, that makes it undoable because they don't have their own car. If you don't have your own car, that's pretty hard. There's not a robust transit system in Vermont, as you know. So the service region issue is a barrier to solving some of these both economic and I would say drivers that kids want access to CTE. Vermont needs kids to have access to CTE, and we have centers that are having to turn kids away through no fault of their own. They want to serve them all, but they can't because they don't have enough seats. So when we look at that 131 students that are sitting on the waiting list right now, they were accepted to a CTE center either in Rutland or in Burlington this fall, but couldn't go because the center was full. If our center was able to serve even half of those, it would make a $14,000 difference in our tuition, driving it down by 34% because we have fixed costs. We have our teachers and we have our building and we have our heat and we have our lights. We have very fixed costs because we're a small center. And we don't have a lot of the variable costs that a larger district has. We don't have reading instruction. We have only one special education person and she only coordinates. We don't have math instruction, right? We don't have a lot of these variable costs that you have. Our costs are really very fixed. We have a number of teachers who teach a number of classes and we have somebody who does operations and somebody who does business. I mean, it's very straightforward. So our costs are fixed. I could take 200 more kids tomorrow with no additional cost except for supplies. And that makes the fixed costs spread out over a lot more kids a really big deal. So as we're talking about this service region issue, which I detailed out in this document, which I'm hoping you might have the time to talk to other people about too, is what a difference it would make, not only for kids who would have access to high wage, high demand, high skilled careers, to Vermont, who would have hundreds more graduates every year, and to our taxpayers who would get more for less. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. And this is the idea that I'm really trying to make happen over this next legislative session. Spending quite a lot of time talking about it to people. So when we talk about the cost of our center, this is really where it gets down to brass tacks, right? We have these fixed costs, and for us, it's mostly bonds and boundaries. This boundary issue, which AK service regions, right? This boundary issue is a big problem for us. When kids can't get to us because there's no transportation, they can't come and take these classes. They're stuck wanting CTE but can't get CTE when we want to serve them. So this boundary issue is a concern. In our current boundary and in Addison County, we only have 1,100 high school kids living, resident high school students. But in Stafford, in Rutland, they have 2,100 residents, high school students, way more than they can serve. In Chittenden County, it's even worse. They have 7,000 resident high school students with only 2 CTE centers. So there are a lot of kids not having access to CTE. And that means our taxpayers are paying probably more than they need to when we could be spreading this cost out more. The other thing is our bond debt. You know that all of your voters helped us to remodel our main campus. It hadn't been touched since 1971. It was in rough shape. CTE is very hard on systems. It's very hard on air handlers. It's very hard on heat. It's very hard on doors. It's very hard on equipment. It's hard on things. So we remodeled the main campus, and then we also 20 years ago remodeled the North Campus. And so we have to pay off that bond debt from the money we collect. The bond isn't a separate pool, right? It's just part of the tuition. So for us, that really makes a difference in our taxpayers having to carry that burden over time when you have a small budget and a bond debt, it's a big part of a small budget, essentially. So we've kind of talked about this, the boundaries, where how can we adjust the service regions or boundaries, or just get rid of the idea altogether so that kids can go to CTE and all kids that want CTE can have it? And that we are positioned for growth because we're on a main thoroughfare and because it is not an unreasonable distance to either Rutland or to South Burlington, for example. This could be a real, a way forward for CTE, for students and for Addison County. So, well, what are we asking? So fiscal year 27 budget. So this is our last year budget. As you know, and probably the same thing that you're facing, the largest part of your budget is salaries and benefits. And that benefits piece especially is growing at an astronomical rate, even faster than salaries. And then for us, we also have the debt service. So that orange slice, that's our debt, that's our bond debt, which is a big part of a small budget. And the pie looks pretty much the same this year, except for all the costs have gone up. As you know, you are probably dealing with exactly the same thing. So wages have gone up through collective bargaining. The benefits have gone up. Luckily, they didn't go up as much as we thought they were going to go up, but they still went up quite a lot. And then that debt service is still about 13% of our pie. So as we look at what's the driver for our budget increase, it's the fixed costs, the negotiated salary, the rising health costs, the facilities, and the bonding payments for us. And unfortunately, those big, 85% of that budget is non-negotiable for us. So for us, the fiscal year 27 is a 9.95% increase. So I thought this might be interesting for you, both from an understanding of why this is such a big deal to us, but also just to think about your own budgets. This issue with health insurance is crazy. It is crazy. So the health insurance rate for fiscal year 27 has gone up 7.3%, same for you. And if we went back and kind of looked, how is this, like, it seems like every year, but then when you really look at it closely from fiscal, we did an analysis, Austin did an analysis from 24 to 27, it's gone up 50% in just those short number of years. And now, right now it's counting for 30%. So when we hire, let's say we hire a teacher at $100,000, it's $130,000 by the time we're done because of healthcare. And the family gold plan, which most of our employees all take, it used to be $17,000 in fiscal year 18. It's $41,000 now for each one. So that is just, that's a huge driver, same that you're dealing with. But I thought these numbers might be illustrative as you're talking to your constituents too. And then for us, unfortunately, our North Campus, we did, when we remodeled the main campus, we were not able, that bond did not cover the North Campus, and the North Campus needs a new roof. And so we have a facility, we need a new roof. Those membrane roofs, as you know, they start to fail. When we had the big flooding, we had actually a river running down our staircase. So we have to replace that roof, and we don't have enough in our reserve fund. We have a small budget. We don't have a reserve fund like that. So we have to put that out as part of the budget. And then the debt, salary and debt obligations. So the tuition, the preliminary forecast is an 11% increase. That it doesn't mirror exactly, but it's pretty close to the actual budget increase. So for us, the fiscal year rate was 12,688. And the fiscal year 27 is 13,277 for each kid that you send, because remember, they're half-day kids. And remember that AOE pays 87% of that base rate. So the cost to you is $13,227 per child that you send to us. Unless they go to culinary, which is full year. But next year, it's also a half day. So it will also be $13,000 next year. So this issue with base rate, I'm sure you experienced this last year. Luckily, we're going back in the right direction. Last year, we had that weird dip where all the economic indicators indicated that the base rate should go up, but it went down. We don't know why. Nobody could explain it. But this year, we're back on the right trajectory. But unfortunately, we haven't really caught up to the trajectory we were on, but at least we're now positive. We didn't go backwards this year, so that was helpful. And then these are just some of, I was talking about how we were doing those alumni highlights. So these are some of the alumni that we have recently highlighted. a chef, a construction person, somebody in the medical professions, and a design and illustration student. We're pretty proud of them when they go out there. So that's the end of the slides, but I'm happy to take questions, comments.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear, you know, what y'all are doing.
I get a lot of questions about what how do kids get into it? And then we put a lot of weight on the students I work with in terms of if you're looking forward to going to the career center, like there are certain indicators they look at in order to accept you as a student. So I was wondering, what does your entry process look like? And are there standards that you look at for when you accept students?
Great question. So all CTE centers in the state of Vermont are required to have an admissions process. It's a unique thing to Vermont. So every student who wants to come has to apply. We have an online application process. There's one application for the pre-tech students, and then there's a different application for the technical students. Students have to fill out that application, and then we work with their counselors to get their transcripts, their behavior reports, and the process is blind up until that point. Because we don't ask for any information about IEPs or 504s until after students are admitted. Once a student is admitted, we do ask for their plan if they have one. But as they're applying for the courses or for the pre-tech program or for the technical program, we don't ask for any of that information. The application process asks the kids some questions you would expect. Why do you want to come? What is your career goal? What have you done so far in this area? What aspirations do you have? That sort of thing. So there are a few essay questions that they fill out, and then and we do look at their attendance, their behavior, and their if they're on track to graduate. But even if they're not, if they don't meet those criteria straight out of the box, then we have a second step, which is an interview, where we have the student come in and talk to us about why the Career Center is important to them, why the Career Center is the right fit for them. And at first, sometimes the kids are a little bit scared about that, but we find that interview process is really great on both sides because they get to ask the teachers questions about the program, and then we get to ensure that they understand what they're getting into as far as how important attendance is, especially at the Career Center, because if you miss one day of fixing a diesel engine, you're going to be pretty lost. It's pretty hard to catch up from that. Right.
Great. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Any other questions from board members about this presentation? I also want to hear from Kim, I think, for a minute. That's a community member. Are we want to, yeah. Dawn, did you have a question about the presentation?
Yeah, I think you're missing a really good point. I like the Hannaford Center. So when you do your budget, you have a cost per student. And let's just say one of the schools has a big project, like a playground that they want to have rebuilt, or a bathroom or a lobby or something. You can have those students come in there and do that. And then you could take that and reduce that. And so now the cost per student, because you save the taxpayers money, you can reduce the actual cost per student because you're saving the taxpayers money. And I don't think you are presenting that, and you should. And if the schools are not asking for help, they should. That's it.
Thanks, Dawn. Any other comments from anyone about the presentation? Kim, did you want to have a few words? Awesome. Great.
So my name is Kim Farnham. I live in New Haven, and I'm your community at large member, so I thought it was appropriate for me to come in, other than seeing my name on an email that says I'd like to do it again. And Liz is your member from the community, actually this board initially. Our board is set up a little bit differently than yours. We have industry representatives there, represented from the hospital, that type of thing. So we get really good input from different corporate, smaller business. And we also have an advisory group for each major which is inclusive of people that are in that particular industry, and we get information on what the work needs are and so on within the community, which is a very valuable piece, and that changes a little bit here and there. Initially, we had a video program many years ago, and I have been on this board for a very, very long time and watched those transitions. Well, it's starting to come back as maybe a gaming piece. So as we see the opportunity to maybe add a program, one of the only obstacles is going to the state and getting permission from them. And as Nicole alluded to, we only are allowed one new major a year. So this year, thankfully, they've agreed to take a look at the electrical, introduction, which is a really big piece. The welding program has grown like incredibly in 1 year. And it's also part of the adult ed piece. And my son, who is 30, decided he was going to find himself and took that class. Well, it's led to he's applying and got accepted today to AWI, which is the American Welding Institute in Burlington. And he's going through all the applications, and there's tons of grant money out there for all of that. And his only obligation is 1 year in Vermont if he chooses, and he has to stay here during that time. So there's things out there, I think, as we get a student interested, depending on what age here. My daughter, on the other hand, went through the graphic design program and is a graphic designer and has been for 10 years now. Out of state, unfortunately, because she can't make that kind of money here. So I think when you look at our learners here, and we get some of the students who, they're not the bookworms, and my son was not. Hated this institution here and what it represented. And we had another conversation about it this morning. But the earlier we can introduce them, we've started now with 8th graders, and maybe drop that down even more, so that they get an early introduction. My two children got introduced during open house. We have 2 open houses, the one in the spring, which I would encourage you to. And I used to just bring a load of kids that, let's go. And all of a sudden they see something that they're not getting here because it's a regimented curriculum. And they light up. And I got to see them all over at Christmas, was they all get together, and the bus ride was not a big barrier for them coming from Mount Abe. In fact, it was a good time for them to all bond. And I think that Liz can share her successes with her son at the institution. And I had a nice question from somebody from Regen's board member and said, do you have any problems with the graffiti? And we were like, no, they're a little too busy. And the whole phone rule and things like that, that already took place at our institution. You can't work on a diesel engine and have your phone. Anyway, or in the LNA program. And our relationship with the hospital is just constant. Whatever certification they may need, whatever we can do. This past year, we graduated 21 LNAs. And just our, institution. And that's the kind of thing that the hospitals like to hear. They've cut down on their, visiting nurses and all of that piece. So that it really is helping the community in general. And I want to share that with you that, it's a very exciting institution whenever you walk in and whatever's going on, and the excitement of the students when they come out. Young man graduated diesel last year. He works for Mack Truck, and he's the one making big money. And his mother's like, he's making more money than I am, and he's 18 years old. But he gets the work ethic, the 9 to 5, the commitment to whatever they're doing, and some of those things, if somebody hasn't worked and gone out in the field, they don't get that until they have that experience. And that's the other part that's really important for them to go out and do those internships. And you hear from the community, whether it's Steve Dubois, whoever it is, they come in and they support our institution big time when it comes to, how many graduates you're going to have in the diesel program or this or that, and offer them jobs. Another partnership is with Middlebury College, especially with culinary. Maybe we can grow that a little bit, say, okay, here's a job opportunity over here with health benefits and all the other good things. But, again, with those advisory groups, that's a really helpful way for us to grow a particular program or add something if we need to. In working with Don, the question about working with the community on school projects, kind of tough because they're only there for half the time. We do have a tiny house project, and it was very successful. And actually, we won an award in construction on a statewide level for that particular project. And it took a couple of years, but you have first and second year students working on it, so their level of competency goes up. But I can't say enough about the school. Patrick's girls went there, you know, and that's what you find. All of a sudden you go, oh, you know, what are they doing now? And what's their pathway? And it's so different to watch. And especially watching my son, who was bonded with the welding teacher, and he helped him write his essays and all the other things, and mom and dad didn't have to do that. And that was challenging. That's okay. And he bought into it, whereas younger years wasn't gonna happen. But he's pretty excited about it, and it's fun to watch, you know, somebody in adulthood. And that instructor is only like 34 years old, and he, you know, they bond so well, and his class is loaded. Everybody wants to be in it, and there's a lot of women in that program. That's another fun thing to watch, and they're doing even better than some of the other, you know, members of the students that are in there. But I thank you for letting me represent Mount Abe. I love that place, and I'm not sure when I'll give it up, but Nicole said I have to stay at least one more year. But anyway. Like, no, you can't leave yet.
Transition.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, and she goes, no, you can't. The other board that I sit on, other than the state, is the board for healthcare negotiations for the teachers. And currently, there isn't anything going on. It's kind of quiet, which is fine. We kind of expected. The last two contracts went to arbitration. And you know, as for winning on any of that, it's not gonna happen at the moment. But I can tell you, going to the annual school board meeting this year, Bisbit and everybody gave their presentation, and there's a new director of Blue Cross Blue Shield within the state now. And they finally agreed to go up for an RFP for prescription medication. And when we asked that question during negotiations, they had not done that for 25 years, exactly. And I let the rest of the group know that during our voting session. And, you know, it was like, what? You know, are you kidding me? So there's been some changes, and I think you'll see more. When it comes to medications and things, the weight loss medication, for instance, they put a button on that, as they have at hospital employees also. Because it was costing, let's see, the teachers, it was costing $11,000, and the employees at the hospital, it was like crazy amount of money going towards that one med, you know, or several meds in that category. But those are things that, you know, I'll let you know that we're trying to, you know, work on. They're a little tough right now with the legislation the way it is, and the legislature kind of stopping everything for the remapping and other things. So we'll see what happens. Mark Kone, who is the chairman of the Virgins board, has been very gracious about hosting chairperson meetings with Aaron, myself, Lincoln, and Middlebury, so that we can share information on what's going on. And Nicole alluded to the fact that graduation requirements in all our sending schools are different. And they're higher in Middlebury. So it makes it more difficult for a student to develop that pathway, when you may have to take more years of foreign language, for instance, and really wants to just walk down the hall and go to the career center. So, you know, she won't say this, but there's a lot that people that sign up, that's their obstacle, is they got to get those credits. So maybe if that plan started a little earlier, and that sometimes it's hard to convince a student to do that and start in 8th grade or whatever. My daughter was good about that, but my son was just, you know, I need to get out of here at 2:30 or 3, you know. So an earlier introduction to the career center, I think that may be a focus that a lot of people would like to see, and they see their siblings or their cousins or whatever going to school there, and how successful they are when they come up. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
Kathy, did you have a question about?
Yeah, I have a quick question. And this actually came up in facilities committee last summer when we were looking at some new shelves for the science rooms. And the question would be, what would be the lead time if any of us know that we have a project in one of our schools? What would be the lead time that y'all would need for us to actually get that buy-in that Don was talking about, and having our tech students complete these tasks rather than contracting it out?
Yeah.
Okay, so the issue is that we have right? The two sections of the construction tech. So we have a morning section where the kids are 2 hours and the afternoon section where the kids are 2 hours. And we have probably 25 phone calls a week for people that want them to do stuff. So our kids are pretty busy doing projects. And the tiny home, we're building another one this year. So the second year kids are almost exclusively focused on building that house. So generally, we have our first year kids that are doing the projects that the community is asking for. And many of them are novices to construction. So it takes them a while to do it because we make sure that they do a really good job because those projects go out into the community. We've built it, like last year, we built a playground, we built a gazebo, we built a chicken coop, we built a shed. We built a set of bookcases. So we do quite a lot of community projects, but we can only take one at a time. And the kids get faster as they get more proficient. At the beginning, they're pretty slow. At the end, they're whipping through projects pretty good. So we do quite a lot of community work actually. And the lead time, it just depends on the project. If it's a little project, a bookshelf or something, that's not a big deal. But for example, when we built the wedding gazebo, that was a 8x12x20 project that took them a month. So it just depends on the project.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one more thing. One thing we're really conscious about, our buses were, like barely moving, even if they spent a lot of time at the North Campus getting repairs. And our vans and so on, but through the work of David and Austin, we've received quite a few grants. And given us the ability to do that, and David's our expert in grant finding, and that has helped us tremendously. In different other creative ways, for instance, during COVID, career centers didn't get any money. And a lot of people don't know that. So those are things that, we obviously had to work around that, and it costs more to go to a career center. And I think that's the other piece I try and explain to the community, that, a tractor is between $40,000 and $50,000. And if you want somebody to learn how to drive it, you definitely don't want a second or third hand running it. And those are the things that we have to keep in mind in industry standards, the type of equipment to get students, for instance, small engine isn't the same anymore. It's Husky jobs, and it's Collins jobs where it's a programming piece. And I encourage you to come over and visit. These are $40,000-$50,000 machines. And they know how to run them. And when they do that, they get great jobs, because that's an important piece of their training as they walk into Collins or whatever. They're way ahead of everybody. Let you know.
You said Collins, have you renegotiated with Simmons?
Well,
It's no longer Collins.
right, we
Right.
have, we have a grant that we have a partnership on through them, us and the Economic Development Council that's around manufacturing. And so we still are working that, we have one more year on that grant, I think.
That one ended June, the Collins grant.
Okay. So that was mostly, their big push was industrial soldering, which was a really niche market that is very hard to hire for, and it's a great skill, and kids get paid really well for it. So that was the big push there, was the industrial soldering.
I would encourage you to look back into it, because I know what I know, and you're gonna have more business out there than,
Right,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
they
be
do
worth
come
it.
knocking.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the good part, is they come knocking, whether it's the gas company or whoever it is, that says, I need some training.
Yeah.
Do you have a place and a time for us to do that?
And that's where we do that workplace learning, right? So our students that are in our manufacturing program, they're pretty highly sought after. We get a
Great.
lot of calls from Collins, from Beta, from Mechanical Advantage.
Yeah.
Those kids, all of them could have a job tomorrow if they wanted one.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
That is huge, manufacturing,
Huge.
advanced manufacturing.
Well, thank you very much,
Yes.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
That book is online, by the way.
This one?
Yeah, so you can refer parents and so on to that, because that'll be the other thing that I don't get to see it. We're kind of go online and find it.
Thank you.
Please tell your friends
Yeah.
about CTE boundaries.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay,
Do I go this way?
we'll move down then into an update for our finance.
Hey, Brian.
And I would just add that if we, this is my first full year there at Hannaford, but I am participating in the budget committee this year. So if questions come up that you didn't think of maybe right now when you were looking at it, feel free to reach out to me. And if I don't know, I can reach out to their administration for any more clarification about what that's looking like and why it's looking like that. Be happy to.
Thanks, Liz. Thank you. Okay. Update for the financial report, any? I don't, was that sent under separate cover? Were there any questions about that?
Can I jump in just
Please.
a note?
Yep.
Where our financial position has improved versus the one you saw for end of November. A lot of that was driven with, we're at 6 months, which gave us the opportunity to dive in and close purchase orders that were opened early in the year, anticipating on some spending that we've now been able to claw back. The net effect of it all moved us from projected end of year of roughly 1.1 million now to 1.7 of a positive fund balance. That number will come down. We've got some projects that we haven't encumbered that we will be spending some money on, but there's just a little bit better positioning. And we'll continue to tighten that up over the course of the next couple of months now that we've got 6 months under our belt and a little better, more accurate ability to forecast how we'll finish out.
1.1 to 1.7, it's quite a big difference. Was there a couple of large ones open or was it a bunch of small?
We encumbered an awful lot in the student support. Part of that was a new position, our admin assistant in there. Was very diligent about really paying attention to the budget and encumbered a number of items that we don't anticipate spending. We were $600,000 in the hole. Now we're on a little bit more flat spot with that. So yeah, there was one great big one.
Okay. Kathy?
Floyd, I had a quick question about a couple expenditures. Access teletherapy for 17,000 and then another for 10,350. Teletherapy, is that really delivered electronically or are those in-person services delivered for SLP in schools?
That's on the screen. She can speak to that a little bit.
That is virtual language service.
Beth, we're struggling a little bit to hear you.
Is that better?
No.
Pretty soft still.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know why. It's virtual speech and language services.
And how successful is virtual SLP? That's just an interesting concept to me.
Yeah, we use it for middle school and high school.
And is it successful?
Yeah, for the most part, we're meeting IEP goals. A lot of kids do very well with a screen versus an adult sitting next to them. They've made great relationships. We have a very skilled SLP. We've had her for 3 years. She's amazing. I mean, I always advertise, but I don't get, to get a person in person, but we don't get many applications. And we've been very fortunate to have this person through Access. She's amazing. The kids really enjoy her. And she's a great team member as part of the IEP team. And she's great.
Is there a cost savings by having virtual therapy?
That would have to be I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about the cost savings. It's efficient. in some sense?
Generally speaking, no. When you think about it from a total compensation standpoint, we don't pay directly benefits. We pay indirectly benefits to our virtual SLPs, and we have other virtual positions. So it's pretty cost neutral. It might cost a little bit more actually, for teletherapy. But as Beth said, it's a nice option for positions that are really important to have that we're unsuccessful filling with an employee. And we subcontract out for that as a separate, and by our negotiated agreement, that's required. Because SLPs are a position covered by our negotiated agreement, we can't subcontract without efforts to fill first that are unsuccessful and then use that as a backup plan.
Well, I think that's what fascinates me. I think that's what absolutely fascinates me is that we can't fill these positions, but if we can get technology like this to work in these situations, I think that's a wonderful way of resolving that problem.
I think it's also important to note, Kathy, that if you're just looking at individual invoices on pay orders, it might reflect 5 or 6 students.
Right.
So the number may feel high, but in effect, it may not be. And I'm happy to spend more time diving into those particular invoices. But I think that just to provide a little bit of context there, that
And no, I expected that, Floyd. It just caught my eye as it being virtual speech and language pathology, as opposed to someone being one-on-one with somebody. So that was fine. I do have another quick question about the Vermont Association for the Blind. There was a $2,540 direct service, and I was just curious what that was.
That's a service provided for a student.
So it's a direct service. I'm just curious, knowing the Vermont Association for the Blind as well as I do. So it was just
Absolutely, for a student.
That's good to see. Good to see us using these organizations. They're great folks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead. No, any others? Yeah.
Floyd, on the food service support, I assume we anticipate encumbering the additional 150,000 by the end of the year.
Tammy and I were talking about that today, and there are advantages to going ahead and encumbering it. And we probably will, but probably not for another 3 months, as we're a little closer to really seeing how we're gonna end the year and whether or not we want to, but if we don't have to backfill those dollars and we can use them somewhere else, I certainly would prefer that. And it's not inaccurate as it stands. We're just staying with what we've transferred as opposed to encumbering it for the year.
So, am I understanding correctly, you anticipate there's potential that we won't hit the 300, it'll come in under that? The 300 that was budgeted, sorry.
Let's take potential out and add hope.
Okay. Thank you.
It's one of those areas that we think we might be able to support better.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, then we'll move down then to the superintendent's report. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah, Kathy.
I tell you, working from Zoom is so much harder than just being there. Great super report there. I was curious about Erin's discussion about increased expectations. I don't know if anybody can speak to that.
Are you referencing my little thing I was saying before we started the meeting? Or
I didn't hear. No, it's Erin, updated expectation for students in Bristol by asking MAUSD transferable skills. I guess I'd like to know more about what the transferable skills are that they're really focusing on.
Katrina, do you want to speak to that some?
I haven't, I have to refresh what he said, but I know that, especially now that we're spending a lot of time at individual schools thinking about portrait of a learner, expectations and how many of the pillars and the ways that we are unpacking those are connected to the transferable skills that we're trying to make those connections for kids. So being able to up our game a little bit on emotional regulation, social skills, those pieces, empathy, has been a big conversation recently as we're bringing that POL to life.
Where could I find the transferable skills? Is there a list somewhere or a document that outlines those?
I can make sure that the board can
Several.
have access.
They're in our-
Lots of places.
It's annual report, right?
It's
That
definitely
ends
an annual
every year.
report.
Just gonna say, I can't get to my website fast enough, but I think it's linked in there, because I feel like I saw it.
I have a magnet on my fridge with them.
We
Nice.
still short of the temporary tattoos, but that'll give it another way.
Thanks, Katrina. And I had also another quick question about the Medicaid school-based services. The modernization looks like it'll be a little bit more streamlined, but are we going to have to add additional clerical support to make this happen?
Beth could talk a little bit more about that, but we've gotten a lot better with our Medicaid efforts in recent years, which I think is positioning us well for this, but Beth can speak more in depth about that.
Yeah, there's right now they're going from paper to digital, which is it's going to be a massive transition. We're still literally copying out Medicaid forms, as you probably know, Kathy. So that's going to be a big change. So Cassandra, who is my assistant, 50% of her position is Medicaid. And it is going to shift, but we're not sure yet in what direction. How much more it's going to be for Cassandra per se, like how we're going to be adding additional people, but she spends easily 50% of her time working on Medicaid. And she's been really making a great effort this year. And she works also with the Agency of Education quite closely. So yeah.
But Kathy's good. I just wanted to call it, I thought the woodworking pictures and stuff that was in here was cool to see that our students are, doing those sorts of things. It was really great to hear an update on the portrait of the learner pieces. And I also just wanted to shout out the Bristol chorus and band this year. Like, I don't know what Mr. Hamill's doing, but they are killing it. And it's been really great to see the kids really enjoy it.
Mr. Tetro, actually, the band director here, also went over and did a few classes with them, which I think, did you have class with Mr. Tetro? So he's a pretty hard-nosed teacher and he knows what he wants and he gets the results he expects, and my student happened to be like, oh my God, he was so nice and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, think so, but he made them excited, right? He made them excited, yeah. He made them excited, and that's great. So good things.
Yeah, it was really cool just to see them like at the assembly and laying on the floor playing their trumpets and whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. It was really cool. So
Yeah, very cute.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move down then into board management and governance if people are feeling good about the superintendent's report. So first, we have an action to accept monitoring report 3.4, which is monitoring superintendent performance. Can I get a motion to open, please?
So moved.
Meredith first, Melissa second. Discussion, please.
Kathy did a really nice job of putting in a lot of detail into this. So thank you, Kathy. So obviously a lot of work to put into it. I guess I'd love to hear from our policy and governance reps on some of the ones where there's partial or non-compliance and the suggestions, just because I don't know that role very well, and what thoughts came to mind. Sorry to put you on the spot, but reading through some of the suggestions there, as it relates both to the work you're doing on all the other policies, this policy, but also the ends.
And it was not my intent to point the finger at policy and governance. These are things that we have talked about as a board for pretty much the whole last year. And finding a place to rest the, I guess, the charge, if you will, to actually make changes. And this was actually what was suggested, was to have the policy and governance group move forward with specific requests.
Yeah, I think this monitoring report is one of the part of the bigger picture of why we're looking at the ends policy, right? Because we've struggled with not having a goal or a vision that feels like it fits what we're actually looking for. That's also part of the struggle of developing a new ends policy, is how do we come to a place where we're generally specific about what we're looking for and what our priorities are, and how do we show those priorities. So the ends policy currently that's on the table has to do with our portrait of a learner, right? All the 6 skill areas. And they're not ranked in any order. And so that's a challenge. So I think some of what you outlined in here will be true again, only because we haven't done that funneling and prioritizing. That doesn't mean we can't, it just means that's where we are in the process right now. I don't think the Policy and Governance Committee can certainly look at this again, and will have to, in order to make sure it matches, right, with the new ends policy. I think there's just I think there's a lot more process to go through for fine tuning the ends that will come out in different ways, and then making sure that this monitoring type matches what we've asked. I don't think I have any good answers for you today.
I didn't have any good answers when I was writing this either, but I figured it was a start as compared to a year ago when we were much more generic about it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think the other piece to look at here also is looking at how we do evaluate, and how that ends policy reflects how we evaluate the superintendent, rather than just setting everything in the evaluation process based on the ends report, is actually looking at more specific ways. And again, we've talked about this for a year, so it will come back to the P&G committee to help move this along.
Yep.
But there is a clear pathway here by this monitoring report.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. So it's gonna go to policy governance next, is that what it is? Because there's some pretty strong suggestions
Yeah.
in here that I feel like I need more time to think about or process or deserve discussion.
Well, as everything, so if the suggestion is it comes to policy and governance, we'd have a discussion, we'd bring back
A recommendation.
right, and then you all tell us where we missed or where we hit, and then we keep iterating it until it feels right.
Yep.
That's what I anticipate. Okay. Based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor of accepting monitoring report 3.4, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? We'll move down then next to action item B, which is to approve a financial management questionnaire. Can I get a motion to open?
So moved.
Melissa first and Kathy second, if you agree, Kathy.
Absolutely.
Okay. Discussion, please.
This is usually the point in the year when the question is raised, what is this and why do we do it?
Just go through it a little bit more before I ask that question.
Yeah. And Floyd and I talked, Floyd, you want to share a little bit about the context for this and its and internal controls and the nature of this?
I was reading something else.
Financial management questioning. What is it? What do we do it?
Checks and balances. Really just to make sure in a small team. Having the ability to. Separate the duties. So that we have someone else looking and checking and making sure that we have safe procedures. Really, that's the takeaway from this form is, are we able to stay safe and well oversight?
I would add there's a transparency component as well in terms of all the aspects of financial management and who does what and sort of putting to paper those controls.
It's interesting that they asked if the financial team takes back their
That's
vacation.
just gonna say.
Why do we, but think about it, if you read in the paper of individuals that have been caught. It's almost always, they were the greatest employee, they hardly ever took time off, they did this, they were diligent. Yeah, having somebody else do the deposits is or checking or is spectacular to shine a light on something that this is odd. When I was at the Y, we had an individual, YMCA, we had an individual who never took a vacation. And it was about $52,000 before we figured out why.
Floyd, I don't think it was mentioned in there. So when I think about accounts payable, right, there's my mind, 3 different things, adding a vendor, creating a pay, like a check request or an authorization to pay a vendor, and then physically paying a vendor.
Correct.
And we want nobody to have capability to do all 3 of those things.
Correct.
Is it separated among the
It's-
team? Because adding vendors to our database.
Adding
is
vendors is
noted.
Tammy,
Okay,
PO entry is by department.
Yep.
And then my approval for the POs and then, payroll, checks paid or through, accounts payable. Which is Dawn.
and is the same person clearing those checks when they do the bank reconciliation, or is that?
No,
somebody else?
reconciliation is over with our payroll person. Does the bank recs. Great question. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to, and that's everybody in our department. And that's about as, if we had one more duty, I'd be tagging Patrick to check something off for us.
Yeah, you have to defer.
Right, we'd have to have somebody who does it outside of it to make sure that we're good.
Yeah, and do we do, just out of curiosity, because we're on this thread, do we do compliance site checks for all of our vendors? I know we use a lot of local vendors, but still, you never know.
We're at sam.gov on everything.
Okay, and IRS.
And. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sam.gov would catch that one.
Yeah, you get it, yeah, okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm so glad we have like people.
It seems like we really.
It's interesting to two of us.
Like,
I feel like we learn something new every day, though.
convicted, anything, convicted felons, we should work with them typically, just saying. Anyway, thank you.
I have one that I don't actually know if I care about, but it's on here, and it's the only one that read as surprising to me. It's 32. It says, is there a standard procedure to ensure that gate receipts reflect the event's attendance? And then the answer is no. And I don't know why that's on there or what we care, but that would be the only one that I'd read and go like, well, should it? Like, whoever made this list presumably was looking for a yes.
And
I don't know if I care, to be clear, but it's here.
anytime you're dealing with cash, you wanna be careful. And we don't use a ticket system, like you purchase a ticket, we do for certain items, you can buy basketball tickets online. So there is some checks and balances, but we don't have one person sitting at the desk. There's 2. So when the money comes in, they're listing how many have come in. So it's not quite a yes. But there is a check and balance there, just not enough to give me confidence to knock that one as a yes.
Cool.
You opened up a Venmo account yet? Just curious,
No,
in the world of digital payments,
no,
just to take cash out of the equation, no, okay.
it's something that we talk about internally and something that statewide is being talked about. And Venmo is one that we're, nobody's chasing that and tying it to our accounts in any way. There are fundraisers within, Valentine singing by the chorus. That can be paid by Venmo, but it's outside of our checkbook.
Yeah, got it, okay, just curious.
We're very careful about access to that and internally and statewide, we talk about it. And there are some districts who have set up separate accounts that just don't have much money into it. The last thing we would want is anyone to be able to reverse engineer our operating account.
Yeah. Sorry, can I ask another question?
Our treasurer would probably have words with me.
No, just another question. I know we need to get to the budget. So we use corporate credit cards or a corporate credit card.
We have a number of cards, different teacher leaders, principals have them, facilities has them. I have one, Patrick has one, Katrina, so we have a number of different ones. They're on a points structure, so we try and pay items off it so that we can generate some dollars to pay for conferences, flights.
Right, because the points can be reverted. to
So
cash.
we try and leverage that.
Yeah.
We have paid electric bills with it and then paid the credit card off.
Yeah.
And as a way to build points.
I was just curious, how are we? Pick on you, right? You use your card for the month 20 times. How are we collecting those receipts, documenting that those are legitimate school expenses, right? We didn't just go to dinner with our family at Covers. I don't know, making that up, right? What are we doing?
Or UVM, go to UVM for concessions in a game, maybe? Floyd?
We have used, I think there was a UVM concession credit card on my card. And just full disclosure, my card is actually locked away from me. I don't actually have access to it, ever. I think the only time I've ever had anything charged, we put on Patrick's card. But, there was an ELP program that went to the basketball game, I think at UVM, I think it was basketball. And that was the only way we could secure, snacks.
Tickets, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was two separate
Yeah.
charges that were about $185. So I figure that you either had a really great night out or else it was ELP.
I like hot dogs.
And have we ever come across this situation where the receipt didn't support an expense that? was
We've
related?
had a few instances where alcohol wasn't carved out.
Yep.
And we've dealt with that on an individual basis. Generally speaking, we don't have issues because we're very clear. You get one very soft warning and then you don't have a card.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. And then
Hey,
do
hey,
we
hey,
allow-
wait. Can I say something? It sounded like you, it sounded like you said Don, which it wasn't me. I don't know if it's DWAN, but it wasn't Don Manigan that said that.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done with my
Yeah,
question.
I think did you have something else?
Nope, I'm good, sorry.
I love having an opportunity to talk about our checks and balances about credit cards, because it's an area that we need to be diligent with, and we are.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the financial management questionnaire, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Next, we'll go down to an action item to adopt fiscal year 27 budget. Can I get a motion to open, please?
So moved.
Meredith first,
Second.
Kylie second. We'll get into the discussion.
All right, so I think you've received a few different versions. It's that time of year. We try to wait to the last minute to send you something, but give you enough time to review it before the meeting. And then an update comes and then an update comes and we want to try to get you the most up-to-date information that we can. So I'm gonna walk you through the January 6th presentation, updated on January 6th, which just came out today. Not a lot of change, but enough that's worth talking about. So some of the assumptions, a lot of them are the same. We are using a new December 31st AOE LTW ADM projection, which is about 15 less than FY 26 and about 8 less than our estimate. So it got a lot closer than where we started in terms of where our projections were.
Good job, Patrick.
That was Floyd and Andrew, who is our data manager, deserve all of the credit. The number of back and forths with AOE, trying to true up. We did get a lot of forms filled out from those, I think a couple of pushes that went out. And a fair number of those forms produced some folks that were eligible that we could count. So a lot of effort on their part to really get these numbers to be more accurate. So very helpful. We are still far enough away from the spending threshold that that's not really coming into account. The revenues did increase, and that is a result of us, with your approval of the announced tuition for next year, we were able to go in and adjust the revenue based on that new announced tuition. So our tuition revenue increased from the last budget presentation you saw, which more than offset a couple of increased expenses. You might have noticed that the total expenses went up a little bit. That was to reflect the addition of 0.2 FTE guidance counselor at Beeman to kind of bring Beeman into alignment with where other schools are and help meet some need that Beeman had. And there's also a $35,000 increase in the educational software line. With COVID money, we added a bunch of educational software that people have found to be really beneficial and are helping students. And it has been underfunded. We decided that we need to sort of true that up. It looks like we're going to continue those things that are being really helpful, and making that happen took an additional 35 grand to it. So expenses went up a little bit, revenue went up more. So what was originally looking like about a 1.5 million need for one-time money reduced to about 1.3. So that's the net effect. So that was a positive thing. And the new just this afternoon, which is what prompted the email that you got today, was we were showing you the state tax department's projected CLAs in the last draft. Last 3 drafts, I guess, technically. And just today, they finalized CLAs and they changed a bit. So we wanted to get you those finalized CLAs. So that's new. So spending went up a little bit. It was 8.3%, now 8.5% increase. So that's about a between $60,000 and $65,000 increase for those 2 things that I just identified. So a slight uptick there. As I mentioned, revenue is up, but it keeps our ed spending the same. So what changes really is effectively how much of those one-time funds are we needing to hit this target that has remained static of the 29,108,000 for the ed spending. So that's still there. We have the new LTW ADM, which increased our cost per pupil a little bit from what we saw last time. So we're now at 3.45%. I think last time you saw it was 3.31%. So a slight uptick there in that cost per pupil. And so I think I might have mentioned at the last board meeting that what goes on the ballot is the total expenditure, and the change year over year in total expenditure. That's not accurate. Just the total expenditure, 37,862,780. And then cost per pupil and change over year cost per pupil. So that's what shows up on the ballot, which you'll see when we get to the ballot warning. So in terms of the figures here, 37,862,780, and then a per pupil cost of 15,132, which is 3.45% higher than current year, goes on the ballot.
Question.
Sure.
Can you remind me the bullet point 20% reduction of federal funding? So obviously that 20% we're absorbing the operating side.
Yeah.
What took that?
That's about $215,000 is the dollar impact to that. And that is what has become common practice around the state in light of uncertainty with federal funds.
Okay, so we're budgeting the expectation to lose the 20% or hope. Instead of potential, but
Yeah.
it's hope that won't actually come to fruition, but is it, so is that? So that's kind of just 215 off the top of all federal, or it's not specific to like this particular program that you know you're gonna see a reduction.
Right. Yep.
Okay,
It's a conservative approach to budgeting, which is generally how we
yep,
approach budgeting.
yep,
And then to kind of close that loop. From a what's on the ballot, on the the ed reserve ballot. Never mind, I retract it, I'm confusing myself with capital reserve. Don't need that vote to dip in, but we'll talk about the up to amount and how that 20%, if we see the money. We can limit how much we're dipping into our ed reserves.
oh, that's right, you say up to.
Right,
Got it, I'm following you.
Sorry, I jumped this ahead.
It's all connected. So. Again, in all of the latest versions that you've seen, our ed spending amount has not changed. That was the target you landed on, and that has remained the same every time. Things that have changed are CLA and our weighted pupil count. And that's sort of the dance that's been happening. Where it stands literally as of the last few hours is with the pupil count that we had most recently on December 31st. We don't anticipate any major change to that figure. It may dance a little bit over the coming few months while that gets shored up at the state level. And then CLAs that seem to be what we should expect out of the tax department. That would land us at a tax rate change of about 3% in Bristol, a little under 11% in Moncton, 6% in New Haven, and just under 18 in Starksboro.
I know our Starksboro reps aren't here, seems like such a large number, and at this late in the game, there's probably nothing we can do, it's just commenting, and hopefully that's a really big jump for Starksboro.
And I think it's important to highlight this part because this is in effect what the board has control, right? Our equalized homestead tax rate increased by less than 0.2%. I don't think most people would look at that and think there's anything like that would be, I think, appreciated. Beyond that are things outside of your control. CLA, not really within your control. Number of pupils we have, not really. The CLAs really are another pretty significant impact, and that's almost directly what you can see generating these increases. Despite the state's efforts to create a common statewide CLA that is factored into the individual town CLA to try and mitigate the impact of CLA, CLA still has a pretty significant impact. When we look at what that does for dollars and cents per 100,000, we're looking at increases of anywhere from about 58 to almost $200 per 100,000 of assessed value. For the 1/3 of folks that pay based on their home's value, still looking at a decrease, which we've been projecting all along, assuming the median household income for folks that pay based on their income sensitized income.
Thank you. I can imagine this is really stressful to put together with so many things changing so frequently.
And they're likely to change more. I mean, CLAs perhaps not. Our equalized pupil count may change a little bit. The yield could change. There's been a lot of talk about this idea of using $75 million in one-time funds. How likely that is or not, your guess is as good as mine. In the event that $75 million of one-time funds, ballpark, because the math magic that goes into figuring out how that impacts the yield and how that impacts everything else is complicated. So take it with a big grain of salt. In the event $75 million of one-time funds is used, we would be looking at the percent change of, instead of going up 3%, Bristol would go down about 2.5%. Instead of up, I think Moncton was about 11%. They would be up about 4.8. Instead of 6% in New Haven, it would be 0.3% increase. And instead of 17.8 in Starksboro, 11.4. So it would have a pretty significant impact of bringing everything down a bit if that $75 million is applied.
When are we supposed to know about that?
June, maybe?
Perfect,
May?
perfect.
So is now the time to let Herb know? I'm taking it Herb's not there tonight. This would be a perfect time for Herb to understand this and take it back to the Ed Committee. This is, I am looking at somebody in Starksboro. They're going to be looking at close to a 600. If they have a $300,000 house, they're looking at close to a $600 tax increase for schools. New Haven is, again, it's, 300 be $340 something for New Haven if you have a $300,000 house. These are big numbers that we're talking about here when you're looking at folks who are stressed already and that may not qualify for the income sensitivity. And there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, you put this page up. That's the one I was looking at. I think this one is interesting too, because it kind of, not completely, but slightly flip-flops the percentage increases we have with Bristol having a 1.9 tax rate. Right, so you would expect, I would assume that our increase would be a little lower since we are already starting at such a significantly higher property tax rate in our town, right? Like, so to me, that kind of, if you look at what we're paying, Bristol is paying the highest rate, which I think translates differently to when the bill comes.
Yeah.
When I look at this and then I go back to reviewing the monitoring report that I just did, and that's why I reported non-compliance, because the question in the monitoring report is the cost of our efforts to achieve these ends considered acceptable by the community? And I don't believe that we have communities that have the income level to sustain what we're presenting here, even though we've done a phenomenal job. And Patrick and Floyd, this all rests on your shoulders of getting this into a range that is palatable, but it's still, even though it's palatable, it's not acceptable and it's not sustainable. And you were right, Patrick, when you wrote in your ends report, we can't continue to do this. And you look at this and it very clearly says that no matter how hard we try, we can't continue to do this. And we shouldn't. We owe that to the taxpayers to do something different.
And I think a couple of contextual pieces. One, so today was the first day of the legislative session. This conversation as a state was very much alive right away on day one. So it's going to be a lively session specifically regarding the cost of everything in Vermont, pretty specifically this session, education. And for us contextually, this is not a surprise. It's not new. And we're feeling the effects that we expected to feel, that we kind of knew were going to be needed to get to a point where we could generate enough energy to do something about it, because the doing something is the hard. Whether we're there or not now, time will tell. But I think we are doing our due diligence to continue to work to make change in a way that is more affordable to our taxpayers, but also better for our students and better for our teachers. And I think that same notion is our work before us as a state.
Absolutely. And is it up to us to go to our legislators or to show up in Montpelier, both as board members and as taxpayers? I mean, what more is it going to take? I mean, we're doing everything we can, and preparing these kind of budgets year after year after year is totally defeatist. I give this board and our staff and our teachers incredible kudos for being able to climb over that hurdle every year and try and keep a positive outlook to do exactly what we need to do for our students. But it is totally defeatist until something changes in Montpelier. And if it's going to take us to go there, what do you think, Patrick? What can we do?
I think talking with local legislators is impactful. That's perhaps more impactful than showing up in Montpelier. I think the opportunity to bend the ear one-on-one with local legislators is powerful. I do that with some regularity in sometimes one-on-one, sometimes with other groups of regional leaders, sometimes at the State House in committee sessions, through VSA. So there's no wrong way to share our experience, our reality, our challenge, our hope, our ideas. I think the more ways that can happen, the better. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note, our tax rate as a district is static, is the way to look at it. And we benefit from a lifting real estate value, which is what drives the CLA, which is what drives the tax rate. And so there's a silver lining there, but it doesn't transfer to your checkbook, right? All of our homes are increasing in value, and this reflects that. That's the hard part, is that you don't have the ability to access that increase. It's still a positive.
I also, I was thinking about what you're saying, Kathy, and this board made the choice, which I appreciate. And if I'm being frank, I'm a little nervous about it at the same time, to use $1.3 million of one-time funds to buy the tax rates down to what we're looking at. In terms of feeling the pain, right? If not for using the 1.3 million, the board chose to make $1.3 million in reductions, because that's the same effect, to still have an 18% increase in Starksboro and an 11% increase in Moncton. I think it might have been like, boy, that feeling of we just cut a $1.3 million in positions and supports and things for kids, and you're still feeling this tax effect, like, ouch. That is still effectively what we're working with right here.
And it's only going to get worse.
14, you said approximately 14 positions, Jen. So
Right.
like that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's so impactful on our students. Our outcomes aren't going to get better.
And I promise you, what I hear on the regular basis is not, we need fewer people.
No, and when you look at year over year, you look at the test scores that we've been looking at, and in your report, Patrick, year over year, I mean, we're consistently saying, here's our goals. Do we need to improve, and we need to narrow that gap between, the students who may have an economically challenged background or have some kind of need, and just have a full movement forward and better test scores, better outcomes. We're spending this much money, we should be able to do that. So we've got to do something different.
Well said, Kathy.
We can definitely talk about that more as we get into the discussion item H. But in terms of this fiscal year 27 budget, are we ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Liz? Yeah, is there? But, we'd be putting forward a proposal, right? There's more than one version in here.
That's a good point. So like, are we, like a point of order?
Which,
Think of it read as presented. That is what I just presented.
okay,
And when I think when we adopt the warning in the ballot, that reflects the total spending and the change in the cost per pupil. So I think that will tie that together.
So no more discussion?
Because honestly, our total spending in the version you just got today isn't different than what you had earlier. Our numbers of pupils isn't different than what you had earlier. The only difference is the CLAs and the tax impact, which we're still only projecting and doesn't get set until after anyway, so.
That feel comfortable? Yep. Okay. So all those in favor of adopting the fiscal year 27 budget as presented? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The next action item is to approve the warning and the ballot. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Kathy first.
Second.
Mike second. Discussion, please.
So these have been reviewed by legal. There's one change that you may have noticed last year and maybe the year before, but for sure last year, we shifted to appointing co-treasurers. The practice before had been only a treasurer got appointed and then, or elected, I should say. And then we just found someone else to be the backup to the treasurer, which didn't feel right. Like we have like an unelected person acting as our treasurer. Like we're asking our treasurer to come in weekly to sign checks so that we can make sure we're getting payments out, we're not incurring late fees, et cetera, et cetera. So it made sense to move to co-treasurers to recognize, if one person's gone on vacation or something, we still want to make sure we get the bills paid and all that. Dina didn't have any suggestions around that last year. This year, she suggested that that's something we can't do. You have to appoint a treasurer. That treasurer, by statute that she found and traced all the breadcrumbs for, can appoint a person to support them. But that treasurer that is elected holds the responsibility even for the work that the person they appoint is doing. So that's a change to the warning for the annual meeting, that we would elect just a treasurer that will appoint a backup instead of co-treasurers. And everything else is pretty straightforward. Effectively, no real change. So we've sort of figured it out on a kind of a per diem basis for the treasurer. So whoever comes in that week gets sort of that week's per diem pay. And we can extend that with a treasurer that has a backup that they appoint. So.
Provided they haven't been a convicted felon.
Yes, we'll still check on that.
Thank you.
There are lots of other things we'll look for.
There's
That's on the list.
a little levity.
Any other discussion about how it's worded, questions about what's on here?
In regard to how it's worded, it's by statute, that's what it has to say.
This good thing is read real well, but.
Nope, reach pretty
Read
legally.
legally. Yeah. Oh,
Barb's the clerk this year,
Barb is the clerk this year.
so
She's pretty excited about it.
she's
Go Barb.
super excited, so she should get that clerk next to her name instead of next to mine. It's on that way on the ballot. So, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
She deserves the work.
Morning.
Oh, yeah, so we used to.
Oh,
I mean, Doesn't make or break anything, I'm sure, but
I bet that's something that we can, I'm just trying to think about. Do we go through the process of reprinting? I feel like that's something we could probably strike out and then write in. Yeah,
Okay.
because
Do you
this
want-
is,
Jennifer to do it.
it'll be really important that, so our window to warn this starts later this week. And we need the signatures on that document to position us to be able to warn it officially. So I'm hesitant to delay getting signatures because we have a pretty narrow window. By law, we have a 10-day window to warn this, for town meeting day. So I think we'll go ahead and just strike out clerk from Liz and write in clerk next to Barb. And we'll get signatures tonight. And if there's, for some reason, that's not okay, we'll do some scrambling and come up with a plan.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Establish on this warning is established salaries. This comes up every year, and is it $1,200 a year per member and more for the board president and vice president? Is that?
I want to say, I'm just pulling off the top of my head, I think it is currently, and I'll have this prepared for the annual meeting, I think it is 1,200 per member. I want to say it's 1,500 for the vice chair and 2,400 for the chair. I think the 12 and the 24 are right. I don't know if the vice chair, I'm not concerned, I'm not certain of the vice chair.
Sorry.
Mike?
You guys aren't all doing this for the meeting? What? You not paying attention to this?
As I say most years, it's for the negative pennies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I will have for the annual
Okay.
meeting, position is currently getting as a basis for conversation.
I
Yeah,
have it.
You have it?
it comes up every year, and we are always kind of.
It's 1,200, 2,400. I don't, I'm looking in the budget, so I'm not sure if I'm missing the board vice chair. Not seeing that.
Well, we don't have to pay him. Is that true? We don't have to pay him.
That's how it goes, yeah, exactly.
Barb?
first year with a vice chair.
No.
There may just not be a pay differential for the vice chair. The end of this
Just the
kindness of
last
his heart.
chair.
I think there is a little bit.
The minutes from last year's annual meeting.
Yeah.
The chair was 2,400, vice chair 1,800, trustees 1,200. Auditor 15,
Yeah.
the treasurer split 17, clerk 12.
Beautiful.
Oh my God, that's one.
Did you hear that, Kathy?
It's in the annual
Okay.
minutes on your website.
Yeah, just so that we have it for the annual meeting, because it always comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to spend a lot of time on that sometimes.
Yeah. Do you want to be paid more? Think about that now.
Well, I think last year I calculated it and I made about 73 cents per hour. And I
My advice
grossly
is-
overpaid.
Don't do that.
Barb?
Yeah, I was wondering about the signature. Is it okay if I pop in the morning? Or
Yep.
does somebody want to sign my name? now?
No.
We won't do that, but you can stop in sometime later this week. If you want to just connect with Jennifer about what time works, we'll make sure everything's ready for you.
Okay, thanks.
Can we do it electronically? Is there a way to do it electronically?
Possibly, we might not need to, Kathy, if we have enough signatures. If we have to jump through that hoop, we will. If we don't have to, then we may not, if you're okay with that.
I'm
It's a little-
absolutely fine with it, but I would tell you it's 78 degrees and the pool is at 84. So if anybody needs to come down here, you
I'm
can
on my
bring
way.
it down here.
So it's just a quick 3-hour flight, right?
I'm trying to get points on the credit card.
All right, so let's move through this. All those in favor of approving the warning and the ballot with that small change in clerk? On the signature page, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. I'm gonna sign this and then pass it around if you would kindly sign as we're working through other things.
Around with a pen.
Oh, you can
I
hold
came
my
digital,
pen.
sorry.
Bring one. I'll send my pen.
Okay, I have.
Okay. Next is an action item to authorize spending up to $319,839 from the Education Reserve account to meet the fiscal year 27 education spending target. Can I get a motion to open, please?
So move.
Melissa first, Kylie second, discussion please.
So this is in addition to the fund balance that has been audited that will be applied to create the one-time money that we had talked about. This is what's needed in addition to that to hit that ed spending target that everything was just based on with your approval of the budget.
I'm good to
And it's, I'll just clarify, we talked about it briefly before. The up to is strategic, so that if we don't need to use the full 319,000 because of, we get more revenue than we think we might from the feds, et cetera. We can dial that back and keep those ed reserves intact, which you may wish to have for FY 28.
So
Any
Ed,
other-
sorry,
Go ahead, yep.
just trying to remember that monies that we've set aside for facilities count against us with the state at this point, but money that's set aside in ed reserve does not, correct?
Believe that's true, Floyd, is that your understanding? That the conversation I've only heard has been focused on specifically capital reserve funds that are 5 years or older than 5 years. I've
And I
not heard
haven't
the
done the
same.
research to be able to definitively agree with that, but we're not seasoned to the point where it's a concern anyway.
Can I ask a question? So I figured out the math, the 1,020,000 that was on the financial report. That against 1.3, we need to make connected budget, you get the 319, so the math makes sense to me, but the 1,020,000 is uncommitted fund balance, because we haven't voted to move it to the ed reserve fund yet.
It doesn't need to go in the ed reserve fund, that is. Unless there's an action to do something else with it. Uncommitted fund balance that has been audited automatically goes to decrease the tax rate.
Oh,
So you would have to put it into an ed reserve or put it into a capital reserve
Got it.
for it not to do that. So that's automatic. And then the action for the 319 was to build that up to what it needed to be to hit the target.
got it, okay, thank you for the clarity. Full.
That's the default.
Yeah, got it, thank you.
All those in favor of authorizing that spending up to $319,839 from the ed reserve account, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. Next, we have an action item to approve warning the revised ends policy. That was set under separate coverage, so everyone's aware. Can I get a motion to open, please?
So moved.
Meredith first, Kylie second. I'll give you a second to open it, but Mike, do you have it available to share by any chance?
Nice job, Erin.
Yeah, thanks. This was actually a really big group effort between myself, Patrick, Katrina, and some of the Up for Learning folks. And like I mentioned, I think there's still some fine tuning to do. This is the first time in my knowledge that we've revisited this policy, and I think there's a lot to learn still about what makes a good ends policy and what we can do to fine tune it. I did follow pretty closely the Essex Westford outline and how they have presented theirs. They also worked with Up for Learning and had their expertise in building theirs. So I like their structure, and we kind of closely followed that. All that to say, I think it's a good stepping stone to something that feels even more fine-tuned. Are there any thoughts or questions about it, though?
I know he's not here, but Herb did send an email asking for clear academic and SEL standards and expectations.
Yeah.
Just curious what the discussion was on, do we want to set like X percentage of people will show proficiency, X percentage of people will have less than this number discipline referrals, just how we were feeling about that.
Yes. we've talked about that quite a bit. I also share that as a limitation of how it's currently presented um, is that we don't have a priority. So right now, all six competencies are weighted the same. They're all prioritized. And that's one limitation I find is that this doesn't have clearly defined this above all else. So I agree in a lot of respects that that's true. Getting to that percentage mark, I'm not sure is the play. As much as saying, hey, Patrick, it's really important that kids have this and this and that's where we'll put resources into, and then all else is butter, right? The strategic plan will also have a lot of say in where resources are being allocated to meet certain things. So it's a really fine balance of how much we say here and how much we allow things to play out in the strategic plan otherwise. So I do agree, but the board as a whole hasn't done that work yet. What we're prioritizing, and so I'm hesitant to do it now without digging into that as a group.
Thank you. And I'm wondering about digging into that as a group. I'm not 100% clear where community engagement committee fits in.
Yeah.
And if that, staff, students, community.
Yeah, I also shared that in terms of that feels like a missing piece for me right now is that we haven't said, here's what we've heard from everybody. What are the thoughts about what we've heard from you? To get that sense too of if we're hitting the mark or not in terms of what's important to our constituents. So all those things are being considered, and this felt like we were on sort of a timeline to have something to work with as we're building the new strategic plan. So is it perfect? Probably not, but it's a step toward getting to something that feels like it has all the board voice that we want.
And we can have an ongoing goal to continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just said to that, and I really like the way you have that sentence section on the screen now about that we may identify priority academic focus areas. So it feels like it's embedded in the policy. So as we're monitoring the policy, like we could absolutely speak to subsequent discussions where the board has identified a priority or a target or whatever it is. And I think that this would capture the ability for us to then comment on, have we been addressing that priority or not? So I think it's a nice way to kind of thread the needle of allowing us to do that work as we move forward, but also getting a document here finished that the next step of strategic planning can move forward with as well. So well done, I guess is the short of that. Yeah.
Barb.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was just wanting you to know that I was so happy to see the work that we did with UP included. And I'm sure that all the people that were involved, especially the students, are going to be so excited to see this. Thanks.
Which would make it the very first board policy that students get really excited about. That's a high bar. I love that we're going for it.
Kathy.
I was just thinking when I read this after having done the monitoring report that in the mission and vision, in the third paragraph where it says academic excellence is foundational to all other ends, I think that's a very powerful statement. And I think that one way of meeting everybody's intent to increase performance in all of our students and to hold the superintendent accountable is to say academic excellence as defined by, and then put in a simple policy, all of our students achieving 60th percent or whatever. We could put something in there as being a stopgap measure against which we can measure the ends policy. Does that make sense? I'm not proposing it for tonight. Believe me,
Yeah.
I think this is wonderful, but I think that just a simple addition to that statement would really move everything forward quickly.
Yeah, I agree that there's some fine tuning that could make it much more measurable pretty quickly. I also put in a little bit on the end where it's monitoring and communication. To try to, I think most of our ends monitoring reports, we have a big discussion around what's the data, is it, and where's the data coming from, and is it relevant, and, you know, right, all these sort of indicators of what success is. And so I tried to put in some ideas or some scope, the things that our superintendent and our assistant superintendent certainly have added for us. In those ends monitoring reports, but that will allow us to continue to say, you know, what are we really looking at in terms of those indicators? So in line with what you're saying, Kathy, in terms of guardrails and sort of a framework to continue building on. So I don't know. I have a really not emotional, but it is sort of emotional tie to this and having this be really good. And that hurts a little bit when I'm thinking about, and I've talked to Patrick way too many times about my emotions about this policy, which is, they're big because I want it to be really meaningful and really guide what this district does, so.
And I think it's also understandable because it has been a conversation every single year for the entire 6 or 7 or 8 years, however long you've been on the board. Like it's been kind of a tough nut to crack for a long time around the end, so.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
don't-
going on.
Going on 6, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it's emotional, Erin. I think it shows profound leadership.
That's very kind.
Agreed. This is great.
Barb?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that perhaps we could consider this a living document so that as we can edit it as needed because education is changing all the time.
Yeah. It is in the Policy and Governance Committee on our list of things to review, so it's in our rotation and we pull it from time to time, but if it feels like the board is saying we would like to pay more attention to this too and come to some more priorities, we'll certainly have it be more of a breathing document than most. And it's really the only policy we can do that with, so in that manner. Okay. All those in favor of approving warning the revised ends policy, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. Discussion item G, try to keep it brief. But I think it's important that as a board that we remember why we formed the committees and what the work delegations are and why we delegate them that way. And to remind ourselves that the reason we delegate is because there are very few things the whole board can have really robust conversations on and move forward at the same time. And so this was just my way of opening the floor for other people to think about this openly too, of are we still committed to keeping the delegation so that a committee does their work, presents it at the board, we vote it either goes up or down, and then we move forward? Or is that structure and purpose not feeling like it's meeting the need, and do we need to flex?
I can add some context and some color to this. The Community Engagement Committee took on 2 major initiatives in the fall semester in 2025, which was our survey and the presentation for select boards. And it was a massive undertaking to get board approval on both of those things. There was a lot of disagreement, a lot of wanting to go back and forth and revisit and revise, and I can own that. Maybe I should have pushed things through myself a little more, been a little stronger, but it has felt, I brought this up in the CEC meeting too, it has felt so unbelievably challenging to get anything done on our committee because of how divided our board has been on the work we're doing with education delivery. So I just need a little more clarity from the board on, as we're representing the board in front of our community, how do we do that when there's so much misalignment?
Yeah. And I think that's why we set up committees in large part, because we were having trouble focusing on one content area and making decisions that move the board forward. And that was a real stumbling block for lots of those larger conversations. So we delegate, right? We divide it up, we do the work, and then we come back and we share out, we do revisions, we ask for advice, whatever. But really, we try to hold really true to that committee did a lot of work to bring something that's representative. And so the effect should be we're trusting that those people did that work and that what they're bringing us really is only here to be fine tuned, not to be dismantled and rebuilt. So
And I also want to be clear that the people that are dismantling and rebuilding aren't here at the meeting today.
it's true.
So I think we should,
there's things we should talk about further, but I wanted to have the opportunity to discuss that. My understanding is we're delegating, we're bringing that work to the full board. It can be voted up or down. But then that work still continues in that committee, and that we're trying to stay away from blurry one-off situations that impede the ability for that committee to work.
I can say, I think that the subcommittee structures, I think has worked very well. Aside from the experience that you guys have had recently, and I think perhaps one of the key words was the education delivery model seems to be a very contentious topic sometimes. And I wonder, because for other people who've been on the board longer, when the board was working on, talking about the merger, thank you. What time is my bedtime? The merger and other contentious topics. Did you have the subcommittees then? Did you run up against similar issues?
So they did a different committee for that merger study. So that was its own thing. And I think it was right after that we did the division into the 4 committees. We had community engagement though at that time, right? That was the only stand-in committee. And then after that, we broke into finance, facilities and DNG. It was right after that merger.
I don't know how we get everything done that we need to get done, and we don't charge our committee. Like, nothing will move forward because it's just too much. Once a month or twice a month, I guess, right? If we were to change it for an entire group to move that much stuff forward. I hear you, Meredith, on the challenges that you all have been up against as of late.
And we're incredibly grateful for your work.
And I wonder too, maybe it's the way we structure it in the ask, like by committee. I'm not calling you out or anything. Please understand that. What we need to be asking for when the finance and facilities, like I guess we could use the website recently, like we knew we were coming to say, we're ready to deploy this. We good to go? Like that was our ask in that moment versus, and we could have come and said, we want feedback from every single board member before we do that, right? So like just being really clear, maybe in our agenda to try to keep us moving forward productively. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah. And trust the work that the committee is doing.
Well,
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think-
whoever just said that word, I think that's really key. And as I'm listening to all of you talk, I mean, that's the word that it comes down to, right, is trust. And that we are a collective board, but then we go into our separate committees. And the idea is that we trust one another and we have this colleagueship, and that we trust that what we're doing on these committees and bringing back to each other in our collective board is decisions that we're making, and we trust those decisions. And I myself, and I won't go into it, but have felt at times like there's not that trust lately, and that hasn't felt really good. But I think we have to get back to the roots of that we're trusting these committees to make these decisions that we don't have time to make in this larger collective, or we'd be here till 3 a.m.
And
And I agree with that. I think maybe when the work is, because sometimes we've asked our chair to go kind of make it like, we have the discussion, make a decision, right? I think we also as a committee could do it differently, that when we're in a group, our committee is making a decision and we're not asking that more of that happens in between. Because I feel like that is us saying, well, I'm on this committee, so not so much that when it comes to the board table that we don't have that discussion, because I felt it was really important where we landed with the presentation after having the full board feedback, but that we're trusting each other's committees and not necessarily like, I'm not going to you and saying, this is what I think should be on the website before you've brought it to the full board, right? So that's kind of one of the places where I feel like there could be some overwhelming happenings going on. Does that
So
fit in
if you-
between?
Has for people that are not within the committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe like some ground rules?
Yeah.
And then if I'm gonna get involved with your work, I'm gonna do it when you bring it to the full board. And that might just give us that space. Does that sound helpful?
I think that's a response that the chairs of the committees could have, is that, we will take feedback at the next full board meeting when it's presented or something to that effect.
Might make it more manageable for you,
Yeah.
because I know that your chairs, you guys were all dealing with so much in between meetings. And I just feel like I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe this would help reduce
It would.
some of that pressure for us to be having that expectation that you're constantly engaging with all
And
of us.
I want to be clear, this isn't me feeling overwhelmed or a lot of pressure. I'm fine. This is. Our committee can't do work if every time we bring something to a board meeting, we have to spend an hour going over one bullet point on one slide.
That's why
That's fair.
I almost wonder if the opposite structural change might help. Which is, I know currently we schedule these meetings concurrently. But if we varied them, if there were issues that were particularly contentious or that a particular board member felt really invested in, that would give an opportunity to attend multiple committee meetings, so you wouldn't duplicate the work.
Yeah.
They'd be there for the work.
Yeah.
And then when that got brought back to the board, you wouldn't have to do it again, right? And it would be a small structural shift to try to misalign when we meet. I think we should probably promote a general expectation that you trust the committee. But I could imagine that there are issues where individuals or groups feel so strongly about that they want to be a part of that work. And in some ways that might actually be really beneficial. And it's more hands on deck. It's more work for that person. But they'd have to show up and do the work when the work's being done.
It's also, and I know Kathy's answer, but it also answers a call from our community.
Yeah.
To vary those, right? Because if people want to attend all of them, they can't right now unless they're gonna float, so two birds, one stone.
Yeah, it might be a way we could do that.
Just have to be clear about voting and non-voting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I should be very clear in expectations of what it means to visit
Yes.
another committee. I think that's a really good point.
Do we have to worry if like every board member decided they wanted to go?
Yes,
see
you
it,
can-
right?
yeah,
Like, we can't do that. We have to
No.
make sure that check to see who's.
I
who
think if
attended
one
and-
person additionally joins finance and facilities, you have a quorum of this whole board.
Yeah, that would be.
We'd have to just
we have to
explore
be-
what that means and what's allowed or not. You can get it.
They're all.
I would love if somebody from finance and
more
facilities
just
could come
this
and
board.
join our committee, because with it just being four of us, it feels a little imbalanced sometimes. So if somebody on the finance and facilities committee could join our committee, that would help. And Kathy's had her hand up for forever.
Okay. Mike, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think two points that have arisen this year looking at the committee structure for me. One is by having our committees go to our individual sites and look at our facilities. We all got a better feel for what it is that we're doing. And it really brought together the fact that, yeah, we have individual schools, but we have one intent. And here we all are. to support that intent. And that is the second issue that comes with this committee structure, is that what happens in these committees plays to the strength of the individual members. You know, when we come together as a board, we're looking at the whole picture, and we don't necessarily get to dig into detail or to learn what we feel we need to know as board members at a board meeting. But in your individual committee meetings, your strengths come to the forefront, and it really does make for better decisions. You know, whatever comes out of the committee structure and comes to the board is the best representation of who we are and the talents that we have to offer. So, I mean, I do trust this process, and I feel very strongly that, you know, I've had to come to this as an individual, wanting to represent New Haven, and then learning very quickly that no, we represent a district. And I feel very strongly that, you know, our Starksboro folks feel a little bit different. And I think I'm going to call the elephant in the middle of the room. But I really would like to make sure that we're all looking for the best interests of all the students. And when this board makes a decision that one group is not going to go off and represent, you know, the decision or a discussion or a presentation that was made very carefully and thoughtfully and respectfully by committees and adopted by the board, and that somebody's not going to go off and misrepresent what was done. And I think that by following what we do in our committees, staying true to that, and Mike, I agree, spreading out our meetings so that other members can meet in the committee as well from other committees. I think that those are the things that make this committee structure so significant and make this board unique and powerful.
Thank you, Kathy.
Barb?
Yeah, so I wanted to support Meredith's concerns, and I just wanted to know if I got this right. So attending each other's meetings by varying the days that the meetings are happening, would we attend as non-voting members? Is that how that would
Yes.
play it out? Yeah. And so the other thing that, and I think this is a two-pronged issue, is that sometimes, you know, we can shoot ourselves in the foot when we bring things to the full board meetings and have lengthy discussions, and it tends to become bigger than the issues or the ideas were. But I also feel like sometimes in our own committee, when we open it up and we want to hear from our community, and it's a fine balance on how and where the community, where the boundaries are for the community versus the committee members.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yep. And I think the community engagement committee finds themselves in that position a lot. I know, when I chaired, it was mostly about racial injustice and issues and DEI, and now it's sort of shifted to options for educational delivery. So there's always going to be a hot button, and there's always going to be a group of people who feel very strongly about whatever it is. And community engagement has the fortunate and unfortunate task of figuring out a way to take that voice and that concern and filter it so that it's being actively used in how we're looking at those issues and moving forward. So yes, there are boundaries, and they're written in our charges and our committee charges, right? And we can be more clear when in March, when we go over those charges again, to make it more clear about the delineation and the role of community and the committee, if we need to. But you always have that option in your committees to put those reminders out that what we're hearing is just opinion to be weighed in the greater scale of the work. So
I think that's where conversations around, you know, board members attending that are not voting committee members and like, is that similar? Like, we're interested in hearing your perspective as a board member and as a community member, and we're the committee that's actually charged with getting things done and moving the work forward. And like, we want to hear you. And as long as you're contributing toward getting that work done, great.
Um. Um. That's a really great point, Patrick. I think. Yeah, okay. That's a lot of hemming and hawing to say nothing, but I'm gonna say nothing. I think it's a great point.
Because I think otherwise that, there's risk, even though they're a board member, they don't necessarily come to every single one of your committee meetings. And, if they're showing up in the fourth committee meeting you've had on this topic and add their opinions, great. But I think giving respect to the folks that are there every single meeting, that are the voting members of the committee that have been tasked with this charge. That feels important to protect that responsibility that the committee has been charged with. Cool.
Kathy was very brave to bring up the elephant in the room, and I think I would just like to second what she said, that sometimes it feels like there's a misalignment among board members on what our role is as a board, and it can make committee work very challenging. And I don't know I think that's a bigger discussion and a bigger issue that I think we're all feeling, but.
And it's worth remembering that in March, when we restructure, when we start to think about what our groups look like and what our charges look like, we can be really mindful about that, about what the composition is, about there's 6 people or 7 people on finance and facilities and 3 here and 4 there, right? Like, if two of us can't show up, a meeting doesn't happen, right? And that can be really challenging. And then maybe poor Katrina and Patrick in a room here on a random Tuesday.
Well, I just want to also, I'm going to take a risk. I'll be cautious, but I guess I'll be the rhinoceros, or bring up the rhinoceros in the room. I think that, this challenge has also sometimes spilled over for me recently as a board member in general. And I think, I don't know if it can happen at the retreat or where it can happen, but, in working on just, relationships and trusting each other as board members, or I don't know, Meredith, but in some way, I feel your pain in regards to committee, but I also have experienced it recently in general as a board member. So I don't think it has been strictly around committees. I've also felt it just even in the work, in regards to roll call last month and those types of things. I haven't felt, the adversarial tone at times for me has been really frustrating. Yeah, I hear March and realignment of committees, but I think it also has spilled over in other ways too.
And I think what's exciting for me is that we have this set of diverse perspectives that committees that I've watched recordings of and participated in. We have chairs who are highly motivating all board members to speak freely and thoroughly on important matters. And so that's key. And then I think it's that moment where we all get that majority and we've had that thorough discussion in saying, okay, this is where we landed. And that is, I guess that's the most important part to address for me. Yeah.
I would agree, as long as we stay productive and respectful and we keep trust, at the core of what we're doing. That's all I would say.
Absolutely, Sarah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel like I have some ideas about things we can start to think about in March in terms of fine tuning board committee structure, board committee meeting times, so that this feels like it flows better for everyone and is sustainable.
Thank you.
Yeah. And my only other little thought is that if we're going to keep going around the schools, I know it's more challenging to have the full board meetings in other schools, but if we're gonna do that, it would have to be the full board meetings if we're doing the committee meetings, because we tried doing our committee meetings and it lasted like 3 months on a separate night, and it had its challenges. So that would be more like, it would be easier to have those always be in the same place and rotate the full board meeting.
And I think the visits to schools is great, and we can absolutely do that. if we're gonna commit to doing that, I would ask that the lion's share of the board attend regularly. It's a lot of work, and we're asking people to take evenings to come and show people around, et cetera, to get 3 board members to show up to do that. Doesn't feel respectful of the time that we're asking folks, so we can absolutely do it. We can resume that. I think people appreciate it. And if we're gonna do it, let's really do it well and be all in.
Okay. I'm gonna move down then to our last discussion, which is options for educational delivery. And I don't really have a lot of updates to that, only because we've kind of pushed pause on it to get this budget stuff sort of settled out, and all fingers and toes crossed that everything goes smoothly. Town meeting day and voting, we really need to hit the ground running again to have the options really fleshed out, get a lot of data put to them. I had sent out, this was a couple meetings ago now, a framework, and I've got some feedback on how to fine tune that. Some of the feedback was maybe the weights don't make sense, maybe we don't need the weights, maybe the weights are off. And that's all good stuff. If you have more thoughts about what it would take to do this deep dive really well, I would encourage you to send them along so that I can get when we come back and we're in a good place, we can get that really moving, because we need to have something really nailed down pretty quickly into the summer.
Why can't we just vote? Like, why do we need a rubric and wait?
The idea.
Sorry, that was
No, maybe we don't, and I guess that my thought was, because the idea is to have three really good options, and then do a deeper dive into what those options actually look like if they're totally fleshed out. Like what the impacts are, what the money is, blah, 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 all the way down through, so that when we go to present out an option, we know, right? I don't feel like I have that currently, and so I'm hoping that the next step is to do that work, so I do, right, and I have that information.
And there's some work happening behind the scenes to try and support the board and get into that point, because the reality is right now you don't have 3 options, you have like 12 options. Because we haven't identified schools. So even like the grade banded option is multiple options right now. So that's where the true feasibility study is gonna help you to take a look at, okay, what realistically are the buildings that we would use in any one of those options, which really can narrow it down to 3 to do the deeper dive. So some of the work that's happening behind the scenes, the advisory council is talking about what would ideal programming look like in a grade banded scenario, in a 2 elementary school scenario, in our current reality. And feeding information up to Truex to use that to say, okay, if this is what sort of the ideal programming would look like in these concepts, what are some of the advantages or limitations to each of your facilities to make that happen? That is information that can come to you, which hopefully positions you to say, all right, these are the buildings that we would use, and these are the buildings we would not use in these scenarios. That then positions Truex to do that next layer of, okay, now let's actually like identify specific positions and where those people would be in the building, and actually get to that level of detail. And how many more rooms does this building now need to achieve that? So I'm trying to, even if for my own benefit, I'm trying to sort of map out everything that needs to happen to get all of that aligned in sort of a timeline that positions you to be making some decisions in a timeline that enables you to put something on a warning in the fall, if in fact that's where this lands. So there's some moving parts right now still for me to try and pin some things down. But I hope to have something to share in the relatively near future.
I'm very excited to see that, and also I'm just curious how we as a board are going to be able to hear that information and have a productive conversation about it, when historically there's been some board members that have been halting any discussion about education delivery models with ideas and facts that may or may not exist. That might have been too direct for.
I mean, that's the rubric.
That's the rubric.
The rubric,
That's
because it
what I'm
focuses
thinking.
you on a certain part,
Yeah.
so, and I would actually like to use that rubric with community members, very much so. Because we're gonna need a space in between when the board is getting this awesome information, right? And to essentially, I would still like to bring 3 options to our community And I think the rubric is, it pieces out, are you talking about,
SEL.
those various
Talking about
impacts?
Academics, are you talking
And
about finance? Right,
So it
like-
creates a box, and then you can just say like a point of order moment of like, are we outside of that box of the rubric right now? Right, and for people to, I mean, for me, when I look at it, I question myself, and when I'm thinking about it, am I considering this box in the rubric, am I giving it headway, or am I just like tunnel visioned on a certain thing? So yeah, that's what I'm really hoping for, and we didn't have something like that with the merger, and I think it would have been really helpful for productive conversations.
And maybe the weights don't have to be there, maybe the weights are not unneeded, give it, right? But I do think having a structure allows for that, focusing.
Some of my sort of initial big picture thoughts around timeline, like if we're thinking a November election date as a potential date for a vote. If we're talking about a change for FY 28, that's realistically about as late as you can make some decisions to have time to get them in place. It seems to me like this board needs to sometime this spring decide what's gonna go on that ballot in the fall. Because then we need to sort of really map out in an intentional way, how do we engage the community around this thing they're gonna be voting on and hear all the things that have, all the variations that have been discussed. And I would agree, this is perhaps after the three options have been brought forward and all the pros and cons of the three options, but I think this board still in the spring needs to say, all right, this is what we think we should do. And then we can plan for community engagement, which probably won't happen over the summer because people scatter. But we'll have a plan before summer comes on how we engage our community and our faculty and our students in September when we're back. To have plenty of time for some conversations before a vote happens in early November.
In service,
Yeah.
work retreat, all that.
Yeah.
August.
I don't think we want to hit the summer without a plan.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? I'm not seeing any. We also have a proposed executive session, but I'm not sure we have anything to. Unless you do.
No, I think that was another opportunity if needed to.
I don't think we
advance
have
the
anything for
conversation
this
last
time.
I could talk about some ideas or not, we could do it.
I feel like we haven't had a chance
We'll
to
do
do
it.
anything yet.
Okay. Great, you nailed it.
So we will table that proposed executive session to another date after Mike and I have had time to connect with Patrick further.
Yeah, I think that was the intent there,
Yeah.
that was a placeholder.
Yeah.
To engage the board after you had that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so. Board self-eval, if someone can pull that up real quick, please.
Okay. There's a couple things.
I've got it.
I got it. I'm good.
Thanks, Melissa.
What is the level of engagement of all board members, high or low?
Aye,
Was the agenda followed?
yes,
Yes.
Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board?
100%.
Yes.
Is the chair effective in fostering professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process?
Yes.
amen.
Any other feedback for the chair?
Don't leave.
Thank you.
What went well with the meeting? On time.
Efficient conversation.
Yeah, it was great.
What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings? Okay, done.
Great. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Melissa first.
Kathy can have it.
All right,
Kathy,
Kathy.
that delay from Florida is way too late for that.
All those in favor of adjourning at 8:45 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.